Hello humans. Today I wanted to talk about this guy right here. This is actually the only Apple device that I use regularly. So this is an iPod Nano 7th generation. These things were first announced in September of 2012. Whole bunch of stuff about them, but we're just going to go through some technical features first, and then I'm going to give why I like it, why I carry it, why I do think it is worth considering even in today's day and age. So, like I said, they were announced initially in September of 2012. There was a mid-generation refresh that added a whole bunch of extra colors and changed the designation a little bit. This is one of the refresh models. They only ever came in 16 gigabytes of storage. They are lightning connectors, and these are actually too slim to feature a USB-C port. Let me grab a USB-C cable, actually. You can see, this is my USB-C cable. It's actually too thick to fit the housing for the USB-C cable inside of the iPod Nano. It has to use a lightning cable, which is noticeably, one second, I don't plug it. Which is actually like noticeably thinner than the USB-C cable. This is far too thin to actually feature a full USB-C cable, which is kind of cool. In my opinion, the only acceptable reason to have proprietary cables is if whatever you are trying to do cannot be done with standard. And this being too thick to fit USB-C or USB Mini, which would have been more popular in 2010, 2012 anyways, is in my opinion, valid reason to have lightning connectors. So the overall thickness of this guy is 5.4 millimeters thick. These are very, very slim. Apple's going to claim that their new iPad Pro Air, whatever the fuck, is thinner, but if you count the bump for the camera lenses, this still comes out as the thinnest Apple product ever made. It features a unibody, an aluminum unibody like the rest of the Nano line. They have Bluetooth 4.0, which a lot of stuff nowadays is like 5.2. You do feel it a little bit in connections, especially with some more high-end stuff, but generally speaking, it actually handles a lot of that, the connectivity really, really well. Bluetooth is a really good standard for connecting backwards, and this still will handle, like, you can store multiple devices on it. It handles all of that stuff super well. You can't connect to multiple devices, but it'll still handle stuff super, super well, which I am impressed by. 2.5-inch touchscreen. This was actually the only iPod generation to use the lightning connector, and it was eventually discontinued in July of 2017. So like I said, it has a 2.5-inch touchscreen display with 202 pixels per inch. This entire device only weighs 31 grams, which is kind of clever. They did have, at the time, I've never set this up, they did at the time have a deal with Nike to feature the Nike Fitness app within their devices, which means that this does actually have an accelerometer in it in order to track workouts, but that's pretty much the only sensor that this has. It does also feature radio play, and in order to get radio play to work, what you have to do is you have to plug in a headphone cable, and it'll actually use the headphone. It'll actually use the headphone cable as its radio receiver in order to play radio. Another thing about it is it does have live pause with a 15-minute buffer, so you can actually go back and listen for up to 15 minutes, or pause for up to 15 minutes, and it will. I don't understand all the fancy stuff about it, but it will hold on to radio information for 15 minutes, and you can play back up to 15 minutes worth of audio on the radio, which is pretty damn cool. And it does mean that I have used this device for going in the drive-in and the like, right? So yeah, in terms of audio formats, it does actually do lossless audio if you set it up in iTunes. You have to set it up in iTunes, but you can get this to use both the modern Apple lossless, and with some finagling, you can get FLAC on here. However, generally speaking, it prefers either Apple's internal compression. You can also download MP3s, and there's a couple of other audio files that I don't really concern myself with. It can also technically do video. I don't have any videos on this because watching on a 2.5-inch screen is a miserable experience. But it will take a few different formats of video onto the device. Typically, I have found that the one that works like the best is MP4s. It used to be iTunes internal compression would work with this device, but it doesn't seem to anymore. You can't download movies onto it anymore, unfortunately. Again, not that it matters. This is not a big enough screen to really justify watching videos, but, you know, it is what it is. In terms of the headphone connector, yeah, I don't care about radio signal. In terms of the headphone connector, it will do up to about 100 ohms. Not super, super strong. And it doesn't have a massive top-end range either. It's Apple. Apple's number on it is 20 to 20,000 megahertz. So it doesn't get super, super high up in there. There is some very rare occasions where you might feel that, but generally speaking, I have not found this to be an issue in my music listening. In terms of the battery life, Apple claims a music playback of 30 hours and a video playback of 3.5, which I found to be fairly true, even with this device. Like I said, this is the mid-generation refresh, and I did get in that later, closer to that 2017 time period. I think I got this in like 2015, maybe? Somewhere around there. So this is a 10-year-old device, at the very least, and I'm still getting close to 25 hours of audio playback out of this guy at a time before the battery runs dry. And that does include like opening up occasionally, switching out music. Stop. Oh yeah, because you're doing that because the song was lost. That's the other somewhat annoying thing. If you go to radio internally, that's what it considers to be the last thing that you are doing, which isn't the end of the world by any stretch of the imagination. It just makes it kind of annoying if you connect like Bluetooth, because as soon as you connect Bluetooth, it does not, the radio doesn't work anymore, so you can't just connect Bluetooth and click play and leave it in your pocket or whatever, which I will get into further in my opinion section on this guy. It will hold up to about 4,000 songs depending on your format. I like the Apple Lossless, which again, if you set things up in iTunes, you can download Lossless onto this guy. And I don't know how many songs I have on here, and let's see. Oh, right, it doesn't do that way. Something else that's kind of annoying, I know this is an Apple problem, so I've got 511 songs on here, and I'm only using general. You can tell I'm like super not used to. Where do I have no idea where I check how much. I don't think I've used up half. Last time I had it plugged into my computer when I was downloading music, I don't think I'd hit half yet. So with lossless audio, you do fill this up quite a bit faster. Like I said, I had 511 songs on here, and I think I had used 7 gigs out of 16. So a little bit less than half of the usable space on this device currently with lossless audio. So the 4,000 songs, that's going to be like Apple's internal compression or whatever. It's an accurate number. It's not the most precise number. It depends on how you care about listening to your music and that whole shebang. But that is entirely up to you. In terms of maintenance and repairability, iFixit gives the 7th generation iPod Nano a 5 out of 10 for repairability. And I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that all you really have to do is remove this plastic piece right here, and you can start getting into the guts of it. Once you're in there, you can undo the screws, remove the top, remove the back, screen replacement, whole 9 yards. So these are fairly repairable for Apple products. Apple does tend to be a bit of a dick when it comes to repairing and maintaining their products, but as far as I've been able to tell, the iPod Nano does seem to be on the better end for that. I have never actually bothered to get into the guts of this thing or to repair it. I've never needed to. This thing works wonderfully. My biggest issue with this is pocket lint getting into the headphone jack. So every so often I do need to clean it out. And all that happens with that is you get a buildup of pocket lint in the headphone jack, and every once in a while it'll start thinking that it's getting some type of instructions from a headphone controller. So it'll turn up the volume or it'll pause the music or whatever, and then it's just, clean out the lint from the pocket. So yeah, it's not the most impressive device by modern standards for sure, but it is extremely small and pocketable, which is, in my opinion, this thing's huge benefit. and the main reason I love it so much. It fits very nicely into the fifth pocket, and because it is so slim, it's very easy to find spaces to fit this into your pocket. Here it is next to a Zippo lighter. And it is a little bit wider than a Zippo and a little bit taller. It's way thinner, obviously. But it is a little bit bigger than a Zippo lighter. But you can see, like, this is a very small item. It fits very easily into a pocket, especially the fifth pocket, which is where I will often carry this. Running a headphone cable under my shirt and into my fifth pocket is no kind of a thing. It makes it very easy to find the iPod so it doesn't get lost in your pocket. And like I said, this is 31 grams. It weighs nothing on your person. This is very easy to actually forget that you have on you, which I find really convenient. It's easy, beyond easy to carry, beyond easy to use. I think it's a really appealing option for that. And because you can get, like I said, lossless audio, even if it is a 10-year-old electronic device, so there is some things that aren't, like, perfect about it, it does do a damn good job of being an audio player. And the fucking things are bulletproof. Like I said, I've had this 10 years. It has never in its life had a case or anything like that on it. And, like, does it have any dents? I don't see any dents on it. There's a couple of little scratches and stuff like that. But these hold up to be in remarkably good shapes. They are super, super good products. And they're dead simple. You plug them into the computer in iTunes, and you just download whatever you want onto it. It does not connect to the internet, which is worth noting. You cannot download to iTunes directly, and you cannot buy from iTunes directly with this, which does make a lot of sense. I actually don't think that there's anywhere where you even get the option to type into this thing, because can you imagine trying to type on this little tiny keyboard? It would be an awful, awful experience. So I do think that that is worth noting. You can also just use this as a little 16 gigabyte storage drive. Oh yeah, I forgot I had podcasts on this. That's probably also eating up a lot of space. I have like 40 podcast episodes on here. So yeah, my 511 songs is taking up even less than 7 gigabytes. But you can store like photos and stuff like that on it, and you can use the internal storage of this to store other objects. Like if you just plug it into your computer, you can treat this like a storage drive, which is the main way I have found for downloading like MP3 files and stuff like that onto it. Super, super accessible, super, super easy. This is nice. This is a very nice product. It's extremely well made. It has all of the controls that you want, and none of the extras that are annoying or superfluous. Because of that, it becomes a dead simple object. It just works. It's not trying to do anything fancy. It's not going to run out of ability. Like modern games. If you try and use a 5 or 6 year old phone nowadays on like new games, you run into a lot of problems very quickly because of the fact that it is just so hard to run. It takes up so much memory, so much processing power that older phones just cannot do that. This never has to do that. Its entire existence is play music. That's all it ever has to do. So it's very, very minimally powerful, but it will still do what it needs to do essentially forever until the components degrade and fall apart. Which I love. I'm totally on board for that. So yeah, I'm going to run this until the day it dies, genuinely. It's a wonderful little device. It is dead simple. It is easy to carry. iTunes as like a storefront. I know that there's Apple Music. I don't like not owning my music. I like having my music. I like being able to download my music. I like being able to download my music to offline sources so that I can't have my music disappear on me. I do not like renting my music. I do not like subscription programs. iTunes still works as an extremely good music marketplace. I don't know if this is like because it's still often used in other parts of the world or whatever the deal is, but as a music marketplace, iTunes is still really, really good and really, really easy to get into. It's more expensive, especially on the startup, than like an Apple Music or whatever, but if you're not consuming like 100 new songs a month, it is fairly affordable. Starting price for songs is something like 99 cents a song. I know there's some songs that are like not very popular for whatever reason are like 69 cents Canadian a song. All my pricing is in Canadian. But like I spend maybe $100 a year on music for my iPod, new music that I like. And that's yeah, it's $100 a year, but compare that to even a $10 subscription, which I don't even think Apple Music is. I think it's higher than that now in Canada. You come out ahead, right? So I do actually think, and you have your music in an offline source that cannot be deleted from you, which I really appreciate. Like, I think that this is a wonderful little creation, and I think that this format should be more appealing to people. It's dead simple. All it does is music, which also means that in a lot of environments that don't like recording or videotape, like stuff like that, this does do kind of a job there. Like, I have found when I'm going into an environment that don't want you to have your phone or have sensitive information, they are much more willing to accept me having this on my person. Generally speaking, you know, you still have to file a form and talk to a boss or whatever, but this is something I've never been told no for. Lots of people, like, you can't carry a phone in those environments at all. You typically can't carry even an iPod because of the camera and stuff like that on it. This has none of that. No ability. You can record voice messages, I think, but at that point you can memorize stuff or write it down on paper. So, super, super great for environments like that where you don't necessarily want anything that can send or receive signals. You can disable the Bluetooth on this, obviously. It's not that hard to do. These are super duper cool. And I think that as a file format, not a file format, as a physical format and as a device, this is something we should be looking back towards. It's smaller than, like, I do obviously have other music formats that I like quite a bit, but this is a chunky boy. Sticking this in a pocket is uncomfortable. In a bag, that's no problem. But you also need a bunch of space for all of the cassettes you want to play throughout the day. And it's the same thing with, like, a Discman. I don't have one on hand. But it's the same thing with, like, a Discman or anything else, really. They're large. They take up a lot of space. These smaller MP3 or iPod devices, much more pocketable, and being this small, like, I'm not going to confuse it for my phone. It can exhibit in an entirely separate space. I don't waste my phone battery on music, especially if I'm doing something like driving or whatever. I can just plug this into my car's audio jack and run it with no issues. It's wonderful. So yeah, I think that this is probably the greatest device for my life that Apple has ever made. It is the only Apple device that I use very regularly. I do have an iPod Touch that gets used very rarely when I'm going on an extended vacation and I want the ability to buy music. And that is the only reason that I carry that over this, genuinely, is when I want the ability to buy new music, because this does not do that. But I love this thing. Super, super easy to run, super, super, like, just easy to deal with. 16 gigabytes, despite seeming small in today's world, does hold a lot of music. It's a wonderful little device. So yeah, next time you see one of these guys pop up, put some thought into picking one up. They are amazing. Stay safe and have fun out there. Peace.